Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee with Mirko. I'm glad that you're here, and as usual, I hope you're safe and sound, and I hope you go cup of coffee, and we'll be able to be joined by our next guest. He just texted me, so I will message him quickly how to join. Just briefly, just tune in on our live G. So yeah, we'll be joined soon by Marinus Jansen. So he's the owner and founder of Padre Coffee. So very excited to have him on, and yeah, it's gonna be hey Juice puppy. I love the Sinesto you installed the other day at the boys Butler's Pantry. Really good job. Hey Tanti, Philosoph, Peter, Guy, Louis Fair, big shout out, Roy, and he's the man himself. So we'll bring him on right now. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello, good evening, sir.
This technological breakthrough.
No, it's great. It's fantastic. And how are you, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good. Okay, good to hear, man. Your family and everyone in the Padre gang is all good.
Yeah, yeah, look, it's a bit different. We're distributed, so we've got a lot of people working from home. We've got people pretty much unaffected up here in Queensland. It's like the government's a bit crazy, but the people are human, people are normal, and then that crossover where we've got a lot of people working from home in Melbourne. They're just look, stay at home, trying not to go crazy. Lots of contact over the phone, over Zoom meetings, that sort of stuff. But we've got a lot of cool projects web-wise that mean we're getting a fair bit done. So
I'm
yeah,
excited.
yeah, yeah.
That's good. And first and foremost, thank you for giving us an hour or so of your precious time. I really appreciate you being here. And we
Yeah,
all
no
we
problem.
all know your coffee brand and what you have done in Melbourne. So we're really excited to have you here. And just to get all rolling, Marinus, what could you kindly tell the audience and us, how did you get started in coffee and your coffee journey?
Whoa, yeah. Well, so when I was quite young, I was going to be I started off in the money markets as a trainee and like learning about trading and that sort of stuff. And because I'd done a lot of hospitality through uni, I did a double degree. So I've got a degree in a bachelor's degree in science, which majored in theoretical nuclear physics, and I've got a bachelor's degree in music, so I'm in performance piano. And I did a lot of work in restaurants, and I got quite excited. I met a guy who was a career um, uni student, if you like, and he owns his own restaurant. He's a great dude, but he really got me into wine tasting. He was into whiskey. I can't drink whiskey, and so when I finished my degree and sort of moved on, as I was sort of making my way through trying to work out what I wanted to do, and I tell you what, money markets was not what I wanted to do. I eventually landed in software because it was really close to maths. It was really close to music. And one of the places we would go every day. So I worked for this guy uh, called Mr. His name was Andrew Gillespie. Really big, it looked like a hawk. And we would go to this place called Reds in Wellington, New Zealand. And anyone who's familiar with coffee history, Coffee Supreme. So that was the start of Coffee Supreme, was Reds. And we'd go there, and Olivia, who still works there, her father is quite a famous New Zealand poet called Witi Ieremia. And I don't know if I'm saying his first name correctly, but anyway, so we'd go there, and Mr. Gillespie, whose name was Andrew Gillespie, but you could always refer to him as Mr. Gillespie. He would sit down and order, and we had this ritual. We'd go and we'd do these cool projects, and they would normally start off with, "We've got this problem we need to solve that can't be solved. Let's go and have a coffee." So we'd go down to Reds, and we'd order flat whites. Flat whites were the new thing then, and the flat whites would come, and we'd sit in silence and drink our first coffee, and then we would start talking and working out what we were going to do and how we were going to solve stuff. And so that for me, because I was originally, my father's Dutch, and I was weaned from breast milk to coffee by my Dutch grandmother. So I went from breast milk to coffee, and at 18 months old, and that was normal. That's what you do. You drink coffee.
I didn't know.
So for me,
right.
Oh yeah, no, that's the thing. So I've been drinking coffee I'm 45 this year. I've been drinking coffee for 43 and a half years. Mm.
Still looking good, so must be good.
So for me, the attraction, I guess, because it's always been there. It's always been in my life. The attraction to it built a process for me around thought and work and home and routine. And then when I sort of finally got through the career that I mistakenly ventured through IT and a few other careers, and then when I got into cafes, Coffee Supreme had just started in Australia, and we couldn't get their coffee because we were right next door to another Coffee Supreme cafe, which is kind of like bugger. I really wanted to use New Zealand coffee, and they're doing good things. They're cracking along. So I got into coffee through kind of the frustration of not being able to get the coffee I wanted, which was fine because it pushed me along to actually learning how to roast, and also that because it was all built in at that point, I had that. Like a lot of New Zealanders, I suffer from a condition called over enthusiasm. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And look, like the guys at Coffee Supreme at the time, that was Justin Emerson, who's had a big influence on me because I admire the guy because he's a brilliant technician, and he's got a little bit of New Zealand that it always sparks off, a bit of a laugh. So he's been great, but that's really where I started. And then there was a guy who was roasting locally, and we sort of we decided we'd join forces and we'd start a little roastery up in Brunswick, and that went pear-shaped. We pretty much got 2 months in and decided that we hated each other, and that was it. So we went our separate ways, and that's when I really took it seriously and got excited. But we were kind of, Mark had just started St. Ali, and we had a cafe, and our baristas would come in, and they're like, and we were like Nolan from Proud. Well, he wasn't Proud Mary then. He was just starting out. He came in because we were a 5 Senses customer, and Gavin Hogan had just started with Dean Gallagher. They just sort of started 5 Senses, and he said, "I've got this guy from Perth. He's moving over. His girlfriend's from Melbourne, and we kind of want him to work for us, but we don't really know what we want him to do. But do you need someone to come do some training?" And we're like, "Yeah, that'd be great." Because no one really knew it. And so Nolan rolls up to our cafe. This is appetite. We didn't know. Well, we thought we knew what we're doing. We didn't really know what we're doing. And he rolls up, and he this is back when you had the click grinders.
Yeah.
And
two and three, or one and two, depending on where you are. Yeah.
Well, we were next level because we were scraping the top off the porterfilter with a palette knife, right? And we were still using a
those
single.
days, actually.
Oh, it was, but we had a double basket and a single basket, and because we noticed that they didn't pour the same, we were sort of flipping them. You know, we'd that one a bit less, that one a bit more, which Scotty Callahan did with his dosing tools quite a bit on. But so Nolan came and he spent about an hour and a half going click, 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 click. Yeah, 15, yeah, no, 15, click, 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 14, click, click, click. And we're all just watching him going, what's this guy on? I don't get it. And so we sort of didn't really get anything out of that session. But then about a week later, it all made sense. So we sort of went from this, actually quite, and everyone was trying to work out how to do coffee properly. So we were kind of in that stage. And then one of the guys, I went down to see Mark at St. Ali, and I hadn't met him before, and when they had a chat, and he was like, yeah, this is Toshi, and this is the thing, and don't worry about that, this is bullshit, and don't do this. And I was like, oh, great. And he put me on to Five Senses. And he said to me, he said, oh, yeah, no, we're not doing eggs. And I was like, he said, if you want eggs, there's 14 places on Clarendon Street. You go and get fucking eggs. I'm doing coffee. That's all I'm doing. Coffee, nothing else. And I was like, oh, okay. And then one of our guys, a guy called Ed Howley, he's got a marketing agency now. He's an awesome kid. He was at uni, and he said, I said, oh, if you want to go and check this place out, it's pretty cool. And he went, great, yeah. And he came back, and I said, oh, what did you think? And he said, oh, yeah, the egg, I had poached eggs, and I was like, what?
What?
Poached eggs? Like, they don't do eggs. And he's like, no, they do eggs. And so the next time I saw Mark, I was like, what happened? And he goes, oh, people want eggs. People want eggs. So, yeah, it was kind of a cracker because I was talking to Mark and Bridget a few years later, and they said, how are you still in business? And I went, what do you mean? Coffee, work hard. And they said, yeah, but you don't do eggs. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing eggs.
Because back then, Melbourne was still trying to figure out, wasn't it? Because I think when a lot of international people come in, and I had a chance to talk for people like Francesco Sanapo, he went back to Italy with the thought of, we got to make food, the whole breakfast and brunch and lunch and, plus coffee. So, yeah, it would have been interesting those times. And thank you. This is memorabilia. And I think it highlights that despite coffee being around for a long time, it's only been a few years. Like the stories that you're talking about, they're not like from 50, 60, 80 years ago. So it makes you kind of wonder and excites what's next, really, because it's been already, 10 years. And you have seen the evolution of Melbourne, really, being part of it. What's something that you would love to add and something that you'd like to remove of Melbourne coffee scene?
Look, there's a few things I think for me when I started out that I really appreciated, and they were always the open doors. Like they're people. There's this gold mine of really skilled, really generous. Generous is a good word to use. There's some very generous and giving people in coffee in Melbourne. And that's why Melbourne, like people say, why Melbourne, blah, blah, blah. But it's because we had all the Italians. So there's a strong Italian community, strong Greek community. And so hospitality's in everyone's blood. And then you've got these families who are who've established, and they just want to bring part of their home to Melbourne, and the generosity of because there's two ways you can go. You're like, I'm going to protect my product and it's going to be my thing and no one can ever know, yada yada. But I've got to take my hat off to how they a lot of those families, like I haven't met them all, but I've had the advantage. Well, I'm saying it's advantage, but I've had some really generous help from, and not anything other than they'll have a conversation and a chat to you, but like the Genovese family have been around for years, but they're kind of ubiquitous in that they're part of the original culture, like the grinders. I don't even know the guy. I don't know any of the family behind grinders, but I know that there was the Crivelli, there was the Genovese. Although they sort of brought a lot of that culture, that Italian culture, to Australia, but they were always like, look, we bring these machines in, you can buy them at this price. They were very fair. They're happy to have a chat. I remember the first time I met Ray Genovese, who's one of my favourites because he's cheeky, but he's fun, but he's open, and he loves life. And I know he knows, he was semi-involved in just being available and a nice guy with Mark, because Mark used to, when he had Ray, he was using Geno, I believe, before he went to Atomica. And he was involved with Supreme as well. But I remember when I walked in there, we'd just set up Brunswick East Project. We're not far. We're like 500, well, maybe a kilometre from Genovese factory. And he walked out and he just looked at me and laughed and went, "Hey, Brunswick East Project." I was like, yeah, I got a name. But I think that that sentiment of, let's have a coffee, let's have a chat. What do you need? What do you want to talk about? What's broken, what needs fixing? It was very generous, and it's not that sort of camaraderie or that sort of help that we received or early on was really good. So in terms of things I'd remove, would be people trying to stimmy that. And there are people who think, my coffee's better than your coffee. Maybe it is. Maybe the customer likes your brand over my brand. But the reality is that, and this is the thing that I always laugh, well, I don't laugh about it, but I find quite interesting, is that you get consumers who are like, who think in the industry we're all mortal enemies, but we all drink beer together. We all know each other. We're probably all buying stuff off each other or helping each other out. So it's not, and Mark Dundon, probably in particular, is one of, look, he's been fantastic for the industry, and he's had a go at everything. He's tried everything, and he's a good advocate for what everyone's doing. But he's also a really nice guy, and he's got advice, and he'll help you out. And it's like Five Senses, same thing. Gavin Hogan, just a really nice guy, and so when you chat to them, Nolan, Andrew Kelly at Small Match, even, and I hate to say it, Dave Macon. Hey, Dave. Regardless of the competitive nature of the business, there are people who understand that it's an industry where you've got to work together, or you've got to be, to enjoy it. You've got to be free to not have that barrier of competition. At the consumer end, of course, there's going to be competition, but it's a lovely industry in that we all have to work together in specialty. By definition, we have to, and most people do. So, but you do get people who don't, a little bit competitive, a little bit, and it's the wrong approach in my mind. So yeah, I'd remove that. And I think that has definitely stifled a little bit of the growth. But as we've matured, we've matured. Brisbane, I think, is interesting for me because sometimes I think they're 5 years behind and sometimes I think they're 5 years ahead. Because, like you think, oh, I remember doing this. Oh, no, I don't remember doing that. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes. There's a lot of especially moves through. People mistake it for, a Panama Geisha natural, but it goes all the way down to, it goes all the way down to your basics.
To the people.
It can be washed Colombians, it's
yeah.
not the end of the world.
But it is, like you just said, and it's something that keeps popping up in this podcast. The reason why the people are so essential and beautifully connected is not just from the obvious farmer pickers, which we had an amazing live farm to yesterday, which was beautiful in Indonesia. And it was nice to see, because everyone wants to go to origin. Not only those people, not only the barista, not only the roasters, the consumers, but just the people in general, because we are in the people business first. So that hospitality you were talking about, the Genovese, the big Italian Greek families, and even restaurateurs, that's really the main component. I think that if you remove that people aspect, so you can have technology and you can have automation, but people want to have a conversation, gather, get together and do storytelling. So people is essential, and I think that you're right. For many years, we focus on that Panama Geisha. There's nothing wrong with the Panama Geisha. There's nothing wrong with the wash Colombian. There's nothing wrong with latte art and competitions. But the head kind of tilt 45 degrees down into the cup or into the jug or onto the machine rather than, I remember one of my mentors when I started really into specialty, because my first job as a barista was clicking on a Wega with Genovese coffee. And that was my first ever barista training, was a Genovese at Brunswick East. So, well, it's not Brunswick,
it's technically it's Coburg, it's
Coburg. And within an hour and a half, we were meant to be baristas back then. The owner of the shop was like, "Hey, they're gonna teach you everything." Looking back, it was an interesting training for an hour and a half. You know how it is. So, and my mentor, I remember he told me, he's like, "Hey, when you steam the milk, don't look at the milk. Just look at the shop. Look at the people coming in. Say hi to Jenny. Say hi to John. Interact. And that, remember the names. So, because we have the power, and nobody say this to anyone, but you and I, well, I'm no longer behind a bar, but we can literally make someone's day in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Hey, Marinus, how you going? Flat white. Yeah, sweet. How was your eldest birthday party on Saturday? Oh, went well. Fantastic. You have an awesome day. See you later.
And look, that's such a big thing. I know. We've always been advocates for community and customers or hospitality over quality. And look, there's been there's a few people in there who are big in the industry who are like, yeah, latte art's bullshit. Blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking the same thing because I couldn't do latte art, and then I could do latte art, and now I'm world champion. No, one day. Look, I'm all right. No.
I'm sure you are.
It's a floating peacock. No. But I remember I remember having the conversation with actually, this is Justin. He'll hate me for saying this, but he was having a whinge about it, and I said to him, look, I agree with you. I don't think latte art makes the coffee taste any better, but I do admire the fact that someone's worked hard enough to actually put that effort in, and I want to. Got to acknowledge that. I think it's great that but it's also like like competitions. Like competitions don't mean a lot in terms of the competition itself, but to the individual who's competing, it's a big deal. So support them, get in there. So they're not going to win pouring milk into a cup with some coffee in it. Okay, big deal. But hey, congratulations, you worked hard and you did something and you gave a shit and you got in there. So there's kind of that twofold part to it for me that I find. Look, there's things we don't agree with, and there's things we love in the industry. But yeah, hospitality has always been a big deal for me because I know, especially like recently as well, there's a lot of people who just come in knowing that they're going to get a conversation, knowing they're going to get a smile, knowing they're going to get someone, who wants a chat and who knows who they are, knows their name. And I love the fact that we get a lot of calls here at the Roastery where people, they'll call up and say, it's, now I've got to try and remember her name, but they'll call up and say, it's Jenny. I'll just reuse one of your tokens there. It's Jenny, and I need a chat, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. See you in 5, whenever. And then you walk out the front and say, Jenny, and they're like, oh yeah, two strong lattes, one with honey and baby chino, and you're like, oh, no marshmallows? Okay, cool. But like the staff know that's what they have, and that's who they are, and there's so many connections. So yeah, and look, we could all be about the coffee itself and the bit, but the reality is that it's without the human interaction, it's a little bit meaningless. So yeah. So
also because when we start venturing, navigating territories and waters like communication, transparency, talking to customers, showing them why they're paying an extra 50 cents, $1, $2, $3. It's the overall experience. It's from the minute they walk through the door until they left and you can't see them no more. Because if they forgot the sunnies, you can still catch them. Like I think it's the overall experience that make it. And of course, there's appreciation for the latte art. And I remember watching the Team Wendelbo WBC compared to what it is now. Obviously those competitions help to build a bit of exposure for sure. But look, I think people really is ultimately what makes our industry, for me, one of the most people-centered ever, because hospitality, people go hand in hand. And then, I don't want to interrupt the convo, but we got the half mark out of the box question as a ritual of this podcast. If you could, who would you like to have dinner with? It doesn't have to be coffee related. Anyone?
So many people. If I could, who would I have dinner with? It doesn't have to be coffee related. That's a hard one. Geez, you got me there. Well, it's someone famous or
anyone?
Just one of our regulars.
It's your dinner.
Yeah, there's probably a few people. I've always been intrigued by how people got to where they are or were, and I say were because when I met them years ago, there's this guy in New Zealand called Professor Beaglehole, who was one of my lecturers in my final year of university, and he was super cool because he was 70. Drove a really nice car and was like a really sort of had a lot of humility and I always sensed, you know, greatness, if you like, in terms of someone I really wanted to know more about. And yeah, so yeah, there's a few people like that. I mean, he's probably long gone now because that was, you know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I had the, and someone I'd love to catch up with again. I used to work with a guy called Dr. Stephen Ashcroft, who I met quite accidentally in software. And it turned out he's one of the first PhDs in computer science in the world. And he taught me a lot about the world. But I only ever had dinner with him once. And it wasn't, it was just a work thing. And I remember sitting there going, oh, I would like to know more about this guy. He was like a brain that, you know, I really wanted to pick. But just the two things that I really find interesting is greatness with humility. Like, so people who are well established and brilliant, and you know, they work hard for whatever reason, but you wouldn't know unless you asked. You know, and then you come across them and you think, wow, you know, like, you know, yeah, I'd love to know more about those people. I think when I was one of my big lessons, and I remember being seriously embarrassed in one of my jobs. I was working in a software job for a bank, and there was a contractor who worked there, and the contractors were like, you know, the cahoon, they knew everything. They were big money people, and I went over and to this guy, and I've been working in money markets, so you know, I had this ego the size of, you know, I could hardly get through the door in the morning, and I needed help from this guy, and I went over and said, so, you know, can you help me with this? And he went, yeah, come back to you. And so I went over an hour later and said, so, yeah, can you help me with this? And he stood up in this room of like 50 people working and said, two things. One, you're obnoxious, and two, and it's like, whoa, like totally chopped me down. And I thought, oh, you know, I really am. I really need to work on that. I think that was, for me, it was like, it was a great turning point in, okay, well, what do I, you know, on a personal level, what do I value, and what do I value in people, and what do I value in relationships, and where have I come from? What am I, you know, am I just going to cruise along and bounce off things, or am I going to have some reason for what I'm doing? So, yeah, that's where I sort of started. So, and then I started to sort of take a lot more notice of people who had that effect on me of, yeah, I'm interested in these people. So, yeah.
No, thank you.
The long story.
No. That makes a great, a topic opener, because I think it's something that's been a little bit lost in translation. You know, the whole being humble. I think it's getting a little bit of traction because I follow buzzwords and all of it on the marketing point of view. But it's been such a focus on money, and I think, you know, same with the example of the cup. I think that people have put so much focus onto their work and projects and closing deals that they forgot the actual inner and how they're going to do it. And I think that that's probably what we're very lucky and blessed in hospitality, is that when I used to work for a coffee roaster and I was mostly on the road, people asked me, oh, how can you be a sales rep? I was like, easiest thing ever, because like, the rare occasion that you find someone very rude in hospitality who kick you out of the door, you walk out and say, oh, they're in the wrong business. So, you know, like, and it happened maybe twice in 2 years. And even then, you know, it wasn't that bad. So I think that there's a lot of great people in our industry. And that's where we go back to. I think that hospital people have a little bit more humility, because they do get their hands dirty, they do mop the floor, they do wash a machine, they do talk to people, interact with, and have those nasty, I don't know, ladies, males, kids who swear at them, spit at them, make a mess, they don't care, and they're still, okay, well, gotta be hospitable. We all know that, right? So, and speaking of your career, what's something that struck me when you said how you got into coffee? It's something that I'm obsessed with as a personal interest, but how did you go about, and what would you say and recommend to those people who are stuck in the finance job, into the dentistry, into the good job, into the good university career paths where they were pushed upon them by parents, society, conditioned, but they hate it. And they instead love baking, making coffee, cooking. Doesn't matter what it is. What do you say to those people?
Do it. Look, it depends. Like, there's people who are good at turning business into business, if you like, and there's people who just love doing things. And like very early on, one of the interesting things was we did our first cafe, and my wife was crazy successful. We bought a little cafe in Surrey Hills in Melbourne, and I was working at Deloitte. I was trying to find a job that had soul. I actually got fired. Well, didn't technically fire me, but they probably should have. But I just lost all love for corporate. I was ready to, I'm not going back type thing. I did go back for a bit, but then I was like, oh, I'm wasting my time. But my wife, actually one of my mentors from years ago said, oh, you should read this book called The E-Myth. And have you heard of this book? It's The E-Myth. It was a big thing. Well, it's basically, it's a bullshit read, but it's got one good point in it. And at the end of chapter 2, it says, if you don't like spreadsheets, you should not start your business. And my wife got to chapter 2, read that, went, oh, okay, I shouldn't be in business. And we'd just bought a catering company. We were sort of in the process of trying to work out if we wanted to do food or coffee. And so we got into food and and there's a lot of stress and all that sort of stuff associated with that. But I think if you're into food, if you're into coffee, or if you're into hospitality, and you've got some good ideas, and you're committed, and commitment's the big thing. Like, you can't go into it half-assed and expect to be successful. You can go into it half-assed and enjoy it and have an income and have a job that is hospitality. And for a lot of people, like the thing that makes their business is actually that they are so entrenched in it. And I love that about hospitality. Like, I love being on the floor. I love making coffee. I love talking to people. I'm interested in people. That's a thing that drives me. So it's ideal hospitality for me is ideal. But you also, if you want it to be successful beyond just replacing your job, your career, then there's a whole business side to it. That requires a bit of acumen. It requires interest, and look, specialty coffee is quite good because you've got to really focus and stick to a bunch of things. Like, you've got to have some moral integrity because you're going to be buying coffee at a higher price and trying to sell it in a market that the consumer's not necessarily prepared to pay a lot more for. There's a whole bunch of hurdles in there. So if you can get it to work on a basic level, then, there's a big tick in the box for, well, you're probably going to be able to grow it into an okay business and maybe a great business. But yeah, what would I say to people who are in careers? If you're in a career that you hate, get out now. Just the stress of it, I had a lot of run-ins with people's egos in especially in the corporate world, and it was kind of like for me, it was like, is this a daydream? Are these people real? Do they believe that this is okay? And I got to the cynic end of the scale where, like I stood in a famous insurance company, which I won't mention here, Double AMI, and I was building their first internet quoting system, so you could go online and buy insurance off them. And I had this woman say to me, "Oh, I've read your resume, and I don't believe any of it's true." And I was like, "Well, I don't care, but why don't you just call the numbers and speak to the people on the, and who are you?" Like, and it was kind of interesting because they had a company where we didn't even have internet access, yet they wanted us to build them an internet site. And I remember thinking, like, apart from the fact that there's there's this thing they want, and there's this massive gap, and there's all these people in between who had no idea what the difference was. And the fact that, it was so low level and beginner stuff. But that's not the point, right? The point is that they had a culture that was so disconnected with reality that it was okay to yell at people. It was okay to disrespect people. It was okay to, have this whole sort of hierarchical belief that because, they'd done 10 years shouting at someone, they were clearly a better person than you. And I remember just thinking, I can't do this anymore. Like, and that's how, in the end, and I say this to a lot of people, build your business how you want to see or how you believe it should be. And generally that means you sticking to your values and you make it work really well. And so we did, like, our initial setup was pretty basic, but we had a really good coffee machine and we had a really good dishwasher. And people were like, "Why do you spend so much money on dishwashers?" And I was like, "Because I hate it when they break down." But you've got staff there who like, "Oh, you spent some money on the stuff that means we can do this really easily." I was like, yeah, my whole philosophy is that when you work here, I want you to come to work, not worry about any of the things breaking down or we can't afford to fix this or fix that. I want you to come to work and go, "This is a nice environment. My customers are lovely. I'm making a great product and I'm going to go home happy." And that will, it might end up being, for some people, miss the point, but for most people, it's a really nice place to be. So we kind of, and just from a cultural perspective, it's very real. So even if you're not making any money, look, we didn't make any money the first couple of years because we just didn't know what we were doing. But we were, we're having a go. But even if it's not super successful and you're not the best, or you're not, no one notices what you're doing, whatever, you still have these lovely days with lovely people, and it's a great way to live. So from that perspective, look, if you can make it work, get out now.
and I think, look, obviously, there is, some safety pins, and, obviously if you're in a good position that you're able to, you can start reducing or start looking at time or casual. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily a translational business. It could be changing job, and go in, and become a barista. And I think my privilege and my biggest luck was that my parents, with all their faults, but something that I hope that I will pass on to mine one day, but is they'll give me their opinion about a topic, like coming to Australia. They'll give me their opinion, but then ultimately the last question they would ask me is, "Are you happy?" That's it. Simple as that. And I know that happiness is a big word, and it opens up many drawers, and it's like, well, hang on, this and philosophy. But really, it's what it means is, are you hating what you're doing, or say staying in Australia, or are you enjoying it? Because if you're not, then, well, you might as well come back home. Or if you're not enjoying that job and you can't sleep at night because you hate it and you have nightmares, literally from Jenny or John from before, because they're nasty to you when you don't like what you do, the industry, and especially when you start messing around with your value and your compass, like your values and your belief system, because you start seeing what's behind the scenes and you're like, oh, I don't like that. Then that's a toxic place to be, that you should start looking at least at options to kind of, okay, where can I go? So definitely, I mean, and not everyone can, but the people that can, I think it's important. And Marinus, I'm just going to ask you the last couple of questions because they're big questions. So I want to make sure that I'll get everything out of you. And first, before I ask the question, thank you for coming in. It was very nice chatting and very nice to hear the stories of your memorabilia from those times with Mark and Nolan and all of those cats. I think it's very good to hear those stories. I haven't heard all of them. But if you could summarize, but basically, I mean, the three questions in one. A, what would you like to see in the future of coffee, which entangles with what's your coffee mission and what's next on your planet?
Look, I think the biggest injustice we've got, I'd like to see solved, and I don't know if there's a good solution for it, is the supply chain, the fairness in the supply chain. It's, you can have all the best intentions at the consumer level, all the best intentions at the import level, all the way down, but then on the ground in countries, there's a lot of poverty, and that... look, it's I shouldn't say unfortunate because it's deliberate, but the coffee industry is fraught with injustice, and that, like we're tiny. We make our difference by working with people as far as we can down the supply chain. Generally, that means we can get to the farm. But that doesn't always ensure safety at that level. That's what I'd like to see happen. I was reading something today. It was like, there's so many billionaires in the world that, you don't have to be a billionaire, but you could solve poverty, which would then solve it might raise a few more issues, obviously. But that's really, for me, the part getting that sorted out would be my ideal. And what's next? Did you say?
Yeah, what's next for you and Padre, and for your in general? What's next on your horizon, if you can release it. If it's top secret, it's okay.
Top secret project. Yeah. No, for us, I think. Look, there's a bunch of different parts of the business that really interest me in terms of the future. I think we're still, as much as we'd love to be celebrating, how we're making great coffee everywhere. We're not. Australia is still, it's still quite hard to get a decent coffee in Australia. And look, Melbourne does a great job, but they do it at a cost. And I think the consumer gets an incredible deal, and the cafe operator is super taxed. They got massive rent, they got massive overheads. Everyone else is putting prices up. Coffee hasn't gone up in years. We're trying to put specialty coffee in a cup for the same price we would 10 years ago. Yeah, it's not healthy for cafes. So I think there needs to be some change at that end. But maybe that's a business model. Maybe that's a price thing. Maybe it's I think a lot of roasters are just saying, look, we're specialty, but we're actually just buying non-specialty grade, or we say we're sustainable, but we're not really. When we say sustainable, it's a word. It's not an actual act. It's not something they're doing. So yeah, I'd love to see all that sort of managed. But in terms of projects that interest me, look, I've got a bit of I'm a bit bent on software. We've got Roast IQ, which is a software, very cheap. We're a bit of we're a competitor with Cropster, where you can control a roaster from your iPad or whatever you want to do. And deliberately it's simple, deliberately it's easy, deliberately it's it takes a lot of the mystery out of roasting, because we want to make that easier. We want to unlock that. And I think like 2014 was the year when everyone went online. We're 6 years in now. We've got inventory management, we've got billing, we've got accountings all online. Everyone's got a POS system that's online. So we're really interested in creating an ecosystem, not in a all-encompassing type way, but there's definitely a path to making roasting, in particular, but also cupping, grading, transparency, green purchasing, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. That through, yeah, I'm hitting here. There's definitely a lot of work in that area that we're interested in, probably actively working on to unlock a lot of the mystery. And it goes back to when we first started roasting. It was like some people were like, no, this is magic, you can't, it's this closed door, you can't come to this is my trade secret. And then other people were like, yeah, come on in, this is what we do, this is how it looks, this is the way it goes. And you're like, wow, have you ever thought about cutting a hole in the wall and putting that through there? And I've gone, that's a great idea, of course. So we're into as a culture, Padre as a culture, people they always come and say, oh, Padre, coffee. And we're like, what? And they're, coffee. And you're like, what? Oh, yeah, we roast coffee. But we're actually we're a people company. So we're about empowering people into our culture, and I can't say our culture because we don't own it, right? But we want people to be, and this probably stems from all the corporate largesse that I've been through, but we want people to realise that you can do whatever you put your mind to. If it has merit and it's something you're into, then we'll help you get there if we can, because we're a community, right? We're all about helping people, and so our whole mission, mission's a weird word. Our whole we get a lot out of empowering our staff and our people to do stuff, and there's a lot of opportunity in that. So there's projects, some IT, they have an IT bent, some have a sustainability bent. Some some of the things that have come out of Padre. We had Nina, who's actually married to Guido. She really wanted to do reground, which she's done a fantastic job. It's a great outcome. It's an educational thing. They've gone hardcore on it, and I like to think that we actually supported her to take the leap to actually get into it, as opposed to a company that said, oh no, that's a silly idea. No, we totally encourage that. We can't always be actively involved in everything, but we want to be around. We want the culture to be around that says it's okay to do more, do other bits. So I guess to summarise that really quickly, because I talk too much, is it would be great if that was normal, across more than just small companies that are having a crack. I think if that was just a cultural norm, I'd be really excited about that. So yeah, we've got a bunch of things going on. You know, we're doing a bit with chocolate. We're doing a bit with coffee machines. We're doing a bit with grinders. We're doing a bit with not grinders the brand, grinders the machine.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Some people get confused. So you know, and then you know, there's the strict side of that where people need education, people need training, people need access to think tanks type stuff. So all those sorts of things are really important. And I think, you know, if we continue to encourage that and support that, you know, that's really powerful. But look, you know, there's so many people that have come out of that we've worked with or who've been part of Padre who are now doing something really cool that we're like, oh, brilliant, you know. And we've got our own little projects going on outside of Padre that you know we're all contributing to or involved in that, and I find that really exciting. Well, I'm really proud of it, but I'm also really excited that people are happy to do it, you know. And, yeah, and get into it.
And your passion just literally comes through it, and we appreciate I think that culture built, Padre. That was beautiful. Thank you. I think it was like we zoomed in into the DNA of your community. Let's not call it brand. Instagram shops live streams out of the blue in terms of they give us 30 seconds a countdown when it's approaching the hour. So before going to that, because I hate when it chops in because you're talking it's like I think we got about 90 to 120 seconds. And I just want to say something. Maybe what I would love to do, maybe talking about access in a month or two or so, we could do a little live, maybe do a little live stream where we do maybe a tour of your roastery or of your space or something, you know, maybe.
Yeah.
Yesterday we did a live tour of a farm, and it was very well received. I think it's about giving people that access. So maybe we could do that. But it's been so beautiful and fun having you on, and humbling too. So I hope to have you on again. And once you come down to Melbourne, we'll definitely catch up with a real cup of coffee. And
absolutely,
I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, thank you so much, Marinus. It was so nice having you on, man. Keep safe up there. Hopefully things will turn in Melbourne too, because we're all hoping for it.
Excellent. All right. Great. Good talking to you.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you very much, guys. I hope
you enjoyed these episodes. I think it was really nice to see how Marinus went from complete IT and the finance career all into building one of the staple, one of those pillar coffee brands in Melbourne that is known all over Australia and the world. So I hope you enjoy this. If you have, or if you're new, feel free to share this podcast onto your Instagram. And before I go, a big shout out to Dante, Peter, Andre, still here, Charlie, Kale, Ricardo, and of course to Marinus to have given us the 60 minutes of his precious time, and it's been a blast as usual. I will see you next week with another 3 episodes. Until then, stay safe and look after yourself.